former Kiwi international, former warrior. Are you anything else former?
To Samoa, please come on in Samoan language week. You just said it.
And a guy who likes to put me on my spot. There you go. Nigel Vagana, who joins us this morning. Good morning, Moose.
Talo for lava.
Thanks for coming in. Okay.
Thanks for the 24-hour notice.
You were the one who gave me 24 notice. Once a warrior, always a warrior?
Always a warrior, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you've represented a few clubs. South Sydney, Cronulla, and the Sharks.
As well, and the Bunny and the Shark.
Yeah. But once a warrior, always a warrior?
Yeah, for sure.
From the outside looking in, what is it? I mean, I know you've been out of the game for a little bit, but what is it from your perspective that you think they've found to make things click?
I think Webby's installed belief in them. Like a deep-rooted belief. And when he took over beginning of last year, one of the things that he did, actually probably the year before, was when he got the job, he rang everyone and told everyone, listen, I want you as part of the team. I'm not moving anyone on. I'm not shifting. Because, sometimes when coaches come in, they're like, oh, listen, I need a bigger player here. I need a smaller player there.
Yeah.
A faster one there, But he rang everyone and said, listen, I want you here. I want
you mean
here.
The players?
Every player.
How did you know this?
Once a warrior, always a warrior, man. Come on, man.
My bad.
But I think off the back of that, it just gave the guys belief that, you know what, all right, well, if this guy's going to be genuine, let's give him a shot. And I'm going to be genuine to him, and I'm going to be the best person I can be for that person, right? That coach.
Yeah.
And you do that right across the board with the whole group. That's a powerful group, So they worked pretty hard, and they had a good run last year, and they're continuing this year. So
I mean, the depth.
They just got, and even the young ones coming through.
Yeah.
Because it filters through, right? They say the rot starts at the top in a lot of businesses, but
Yeah.
Also, if you've got some good things that start at the top, it filters through the system. The under-17s team that they started this year for the first time won the Aussie comp. The Warrior 17. So they got some good systems in place, and I think a lot of it's due to the belief that Webby's brought to the group.
Yeah, there's a lot of positivity. It's got that next man mentality, next man up mentality. I mean, you saw that over the weekend with,
right.
10? I think 10 first string out, and then everyone just sort of rose to the occasion.
That's right, and you got guys like Dallin playing fullback.
Yeah.
You got Moala coming and making his debut at centre. And even Ed Kossi, coming in the last minute as well for one of the young boys whose wife was having a baby, and had to duck off.
Yeah, the fullback, I think.
Yeah. So it's that's the environment when you've got a collective group that everyone kind of knows their role. If someone's unavailable for whatever reason, the next person, jumps in and has an opportunity to shine.
There's that buzzword culture that you need to create. I know it doesn't want to sound a cliche, but you need to have that in any organisation, whether it be a sport organisation or even this organisation. You need to have a culture that instills that belief, right? And I think they've kind of got it right there.
But you got to have systems that help enhance that, right? Because a lot of people say, oh yeah, this is a culture here and this there for whatever team. Or whatever group or whatever organisation, but if you don't have the actions that help enhance it and help the environment that supports it, it's really hard to sort of manage, and you sort of tend to sort of get people sort of going on their own way,
Yep.
So, but I think they're doing really well up there.
There's no hiding the fact that there's a strong Pacific influence not only in the Warriors but across the board in the NRL and even rugby. There's a strong Pacific influence, and it's significant.
53% of the NRL at the moment.
53.
Yeah, and in the women's, I think they're about 55.
I would have put it higher, but that doesn't surprise me, right? And which means it's great for sporting pathways, right? But it also can be, I guess, challenging for a young kid and his family to navigate, because for island families, there's this perception that there's a big payday whenever somebody, for their son or for their daughter, and for them as a family, let's be real. The family thinks that, okay, my kid is good, son or daughter.
Yeah.
The Roosters are interested in this kid, son or daughter. That means I'm going to be looked after as well. So how did you and your family navigate that? And what does it look like now for these young athletes?
Well,
I know I'm asking you to go back a little bit, but
yeah, there wasn't as much money back then, but navigating it, I think it was a mentality. And my mum was a school teacher. And my dad went to school in Samoa when he was 7 and left when he was 9 and didn't go back. So I had both ends of the spectrum. And Dad worked hard. He was a builder for 50 years. But they always sort of, I think, understood the value of money, and also I guess the pros and cons that come with it, right? But also existing without it, like a lot of Pacific people do. So when we got an opportunity to go into the Warriors in the early days, or become professional, there was no understanding around financial literacy.
Yeah, sure.
in our people, because we had the barter system in the islands, right? I've got 3 colours, you've got 2 fish, let's swap one and let's share, and so that was the system. Whereas it's a bit different in the Western world. So for a lot of our people, they were stuck in between both. And I think for us, for me especially with mum and dad, they didn't really sort of come at me too much financially, here and there, to support bits and pieces here and there, but they never sort of rung up for some new tyres on the car, or some bits and pieces that were sort of a need, not a want.
It sounds like, though, that you had a pretty much a stable,
and I was pretty
stable
good.
setting.
Yeah. I mean, my uncles and aunties, that was a bit different.
Yeah, sure.
And that sort of, that sort of ring up. And I think it's just understanding the environment. So, for example, just because you're on TV, you're not making $1 million a year.
Well, that's the perception for a lot of these families, right?
Yeah, and it's just for sports people in general, but even WNBA, where they've got at the moment, Caitlin Clark, who's one of their best players that have come through forever. And, there's a guy in the men's comp that makes more than the whole competition, the whole team put together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, and that's women's sport, but it's like there's a perception there that just because you're on TV, there's X amount there. And I think with social media, there's even more expectation because you kind of can be everywhere. But I think for me and the life of a young sort of Pacific athlete, it can be hard to navigate that because the ultimate, I guess, respect in our culture is listening to your elders, right? And treasuring them and respecting them. Now, if one of your elders, whether it's your mum or your dad or your uncle or your auntie, says, listen, we've got a wedding on, your cousin's next door neighbour's uncle's brother's sister, can you just, transfer $2,000 over to help out, or $10,000, because you're a warrior now, even though you're an under 20s warrior and the average wage is 12 grand a year. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you say no to that? But without disrespecting your culture. So there's those cultural elements that I think
we need a little bit more education around.
Can get stuck in.
Yeah.
Not all of them.
Yeah.
And it can be quite hard to navigate because it's your own family.
Okay, do you think, just quickly before we move on, do you think the NRL or the governing body or whoever is doing a good enough job to let parents know and families know that, hey, your son's going to be on TV, but he's only going to be paid $200 for this game?
Yeah.
Are they doing enough?
I think they're doing as much as they can. There's never enough because you can always improve, right? One of the philosophies of high performances is always room for improvement, right? In any sport, in any environment. So I think there's always stuff that you can do, but I think compared to 10 years ago and 10 years before that, there's a lot more being done. So a lot more parents, but also because a lot of the parents are now second generation, third generation, Kiwis, Aussies, in the Western environment. So they grew up in a world where they went to school and they understood about finance and they understood about banks and savings and mortgages and all this, right? Whereas the first generation didn't. It was like your house was your family land. Yep. You just built wherever. You didn't need approval for the council. I mean, some families still do that now.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's like they are more understanding of what exists in the Western world and a Western sort of environment compared to a Pacific one.
I think it does come down to education, and you're right. We've come a long way since when you were playing in 1885.
Wasn't that long?
But there is still room for improvement. Nigel's going to stick around because I want to talk about culture as well. Be a good neighbour. 25 minutes away from 9 o'clock. In studio with me this morning is former Kiwi international, former league international actually, former Warrior, Canterbury Bulldog, South Sydney Rabbitoh, Toa Samoa representative, WWE,
Sharks,
Mr. University, Sharks, Cronulla Sharks.
Richmond Bulldogs.
Can you make up your mind and just stay with one club? Where's the loyalty
going back
there?
to the Bulldogs.
Nigel Vagana joins me in studio this morning. Good timing too, Nigel, with Samoan Language Week. I want to talk about culture, regardless of anyone's background. If you're listening in this morning as well, why is cultural identity so important?
Why is cultural identity so important? Well, I think it helps ground you as an individual. It helps, I think, you know, when you've got a sense of belonging somewhere, and
Yeah.
wherever you go in life, regardless of the situation or wherever you are in the world, you always have that connection somewhere. And I think your cultural identity, whatever it is, wherever you can, wherever you find it, wherever you feel it, gives you that sense of comfort. So that when you potentially could end up in a situation which could be quite challenging in life in general, you know, it's probably just another sort of another card in your pocket to help you get through it.
I like that. Growing up, my parents did a great job at trying to implant culture in around me, and I saw that everywhere with my family as well. But I tried to hide away from culture a lot when I was growing up. It wasn't a cool thing to do. I've definitely embraced it more over the years. But was that similar to you? Did you hide or embrace your culture growing up? And what about the playing situation as well in the sporting environment? Because I feel like these days there's a lot of players who actually really embrace their culture, really embrace it.
I think we were pretty lucky when I started because we were at the Warriors, and the Warriors actually brought culture to the NRL. I thought, and I remember we'd have games and we'd go and play against other teams, and we'd play Canberra, or we'd play the Roosters or whoever. And there's usually, when I started, there was probably 2 or 3 players of Pacific sort of background, you know, Pacific Māori and the other teams, or Kiwi boys. And I remember after the game, without fail, after every game, those guys would just come straight over, gravitate to us, and just stay and just chat about home. And, you know, what was it like and the differences, you know, what's it like in Canberra, you know, what kind of food they have there, or what's it like in North Queensland. And I just remember sort of thinking back that they really missed it. You know, and then I guess on the flip side, we still had it, and we took it everywhere we went. Like we would half our team would be Pacific Māori, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember also starting in the first year of the Warriors, we had a lot of senior guys, Se'i Solomona, Tony Tatupu, Tony Tumavave, you know, Pacific background. So they were kind of like, for us young guys coming through, when we saw them and we saw that they could survive in that world and they understood how to navigate them, we sort of gravitated towards them to help us, you know, in that cultural existence. And I think growing up, like I grew up in Greyland, and in Old Greyland, which,
Auckland.
you know, was like growing, in Auckland, which was where a lot of the islanders landed when they first migrated here from the Pacific, right? So it was like growing up in a village anyway.
Yeah.
I remember a good friend of mine, Pa'u, who lived in Elgin Street, you know, for about the first 10 years of his life, didn't wear shoes. You know, I'm not sure if he wore anything under his shorts as well, but, you know, that's the island style. So I thought we were living in a village anyway. So growing up, my grandma stayed with me, and she couldn't speak English. So as a kid, we always had to speak Samoan, which I'm really thankful now that I can converse in both. But I think culturally, I never thought I had a choice not to.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, you moved away. Like, I don't know what made you sort of shy away from it. Growing up, but for me, it sort of never crossed my mind that that was an option.
I know that I wasn't the only one, and I'm sure you would have heard stories. But,
Actually, my brother did. Actually, think about it. My brother did. He straightened his hair. No, honestly, he straightened his hair.
What?
And he was listening to heavy metal. And no, honestly,
Yeah.
I just remember that. Yeah. And he straightened it, and we were like, "Man, what did you do to your hair?" It looked like the guys on the kung fu movies. We used to watch kung fu movies, you know.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you could straighten your hair, you know, because he had, you know, Afro Island hair.
Yeah.
But I think he shied away a bit, actually. And he sort of, you know, I think he did.
Yeah, well, it's about that sense of belonging that you're talking about, and you don't want to be alienated as well at the same time. Now, that sounds like a really cool support system that you had in play. Some people may not know that you actually, after playing, you work for the NRL in their mental well-being space. And that's what I want to just touch on quickly before we wrap up. What differences do you see in the support systems available to athletes now compared to when you were playing? I mean, the mental well-being space seems to be a priority these days, right?
When I started, there was none.
Yeah, well,
It was basically, and that was in '95. That was first year at the Warriors, you know. So, and I was a young fella then, but it was basically just the club, and however they wanted to sort of help you on your journey, whatever they thought was it. There wasn't a centralised sort of support system from head office. The Players Association was around, but I think they were sort of still quite sort of new, and they were handling a lot more of the contract type stuff as opposed to your off-field sort of well-being stuff. But now it's like when I worked at head office for 10 years in education and wellbeing space, and we went around the world. We'd go to sort of the NFL and the NBA regularly, like annually, and try and pick up information, share information. And I was up at Everton a few years ago in the Premier League, and try and understand what they do with their athletes and how we can sort of help each other. And there was a guy at the NBA who said to us, when we sort of spoke for about 10 minutes, I said, listen, I'll show you what we do, and then we just want to come and learn off you guys. And this is the NBA. We were in New York, Fifth Ave. And after about 10 minutes, he goes, you know what? You guys actually do more than us. And we're like, yeah, but you guys are the NBA. You've got millions and millions of dollars, You've got all these sort of support systems around the world. And we couldn't believe it, but they said their biggest challenge is because they've got so much money in their system, a lot of the athletes just take it upon themselves to look after themselves, right? So it's hard to centralize it. Whereas with the NRL and the stuff that we were doing, because we had a whole heap of Pacific athletes as well, or athletes of different backgrounds, we could actually support them differently, which helped, even our cultural wellbeing programs, building your cultural identity and creating it actually helps towards your mental health as well, and helps, can help build resilience. You create gratitude, empathy, all this sort of stuff. Mindfulness, we did a lot of work on mindfulness and really gave the players an understanding, or the athletes an understanding that, listen, this is a part of you, but it's not all of you. So how can we help support all of you? Because when you're finished, when you're done running around and you're not tackling and you're not passing anymore, you can still take the tools.
With
the rest, that you built up for the other part of your life and your life's journey.
That's really encouraging to hear, especially for young athletes coming through the system now. We can only comment on the NRL because that's what Nigel was talking about, but I think it's very similar in Super Rugby as well. It's encouraging that you look after their space well after a player is gone. We could keep talking about this, but we'll wrap it up there, Nige, because you've been talking too long. But I appreciate you, brother. I know, we catch up often, but I appreciate you coming in and sharing a little bit about their space. No doubt you and I will catch up soon, and you should do a podcast. That's what you should do.
Let's do it. Do I have to straighten my hair like yours?
Or
can we just jam it now?